Let's get, though, to a couple of the memoranda that were written during the transition that President Trump is going to adopt this afternoon. The Department of Homeland Security, a couple involving border security and immigration. First of all, making good on his campaign pledge, and he said this at every campaign stop, every speech across the nation. He is directing the Department of Homeland Security to build the wall. Let's put it the bullet points so you can follow along with this. In addition to that, he plans to hire additional Border Patrol agents, create more detention space for illegal aliens along the Mexican border, eliminate altogether the catch and release program, which a senior administration official told me a short time ago should help end the Central American crisis, because people will know if they come to the United States, they are not going to be released to family here in the U.S. while their cases are being adjudicated. And lastly, in that executive order, prioritizing the prosecution of criminal offenses. That's executive order number 1. Now, let's go to executive order number 2, which would withhold certain federal funds for sanctuary cities. That could have a big effect on places like New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, San Francisco. It would enhance the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Department's ability to arrest, detain, and remove illegal aliens, give the State Department more tools to repatriate criminal illegal aliens. That says old visas. That's not quite right. Withholding visas is what that should say for people who want to come into this country. So basically they'd say to Mexico or Guatemala or whatever, we will not give you any more visas for people to visit the U.S. until you take these criminal aliens back. Lastly, it would restore the Secure Communities program and target criminal aliens for removal. We're expecting, and this likely won't come until Friday, another executive order dealing with people who want to immigrate from countries that are hotbeds of terrorism, places like Iraq, Syria, Libya, Sudan, Somalia, Yemen, and others. It looks like what they're going to do in this proposed memorandum that has not yet become a full executive order, Harris, is temporary ban on visas from all of those countries, reduce the number of refugees allowed in from all of those countries, potentially put a temporary ban on all refugees coming out of Syria, and some other things yet to be determined. Like I said, Harris, it's like drinking from a fire hose this morning.
John Roberts, thank you for racking up the facts for us. I want to start kind of in reverse order, and let's begin with those sanctuary cities. I did a big drill down this morning with our brain room to get the particulars. And you heard John talking about the fact that there are those out there, about 300 of those jurisdictions. Judge, I want to start with you. 58 counties in California. Out of all of them, a quarter of them are considered these special sanctuary areas. So this is a real issue. How's the president doing on hitting it this morning?
You know, I said that he would hit the ground running, but he has not only hit the ground running, Harris, he's airborne at this point. Look, the thought that went into every executive action is it's a message that we have thought this through. You stop the block grants, you stop the law enforcement grants, you make sure it's all about the money. And then what you do, he's increasing the ICE agents, he's increasing enforcement, he's making sure that they actually enforce the laws that are in place. There's no more of this namby-pamby, well, we don't know, we'll catch and release and let them go. No. You come here illegally, you say you got a family here, prove it, or else you're going back. And if you're illegal, you've got to go back to your country, and if they don't want you, too bad, we're now going to use some leverage to make sure they take you.
You know, David,
great.
Now, I remind everybody that this presidential candidate previously went to the border, something that we actually at the time had not seen President Obama do. What are your thoughts?
Well, because President Obama didn't want to have the optics of being there at the border. I've been at the border since the 90s. I've been reporting on this, looking at this issue. The things that are laid out in these executive orders are how you structurally get rid of the problem. An important part of this is repatriating criminal illegals. These countries that refuse to take them, we then release them on streets in America because we can't hold them if they have been adjudicated and there's a deportation order. So he's got to do these things. On securing the border, it's about increasing the ICE agents' abilities. It's electronic detection. It's interdiction. It's physical wall. It's all these aspects, which, by the way, have been appropriated, have been put into law, have been studied, and exist.
So as part of my drill down this morning, and you and I know we have homes in Arizona. You're from there, Megan. We know that the law has allowed for the building of a wall or a fence, a double border fence, that sort of thing. since way back late 1990s. Then it was redone, kind of amended back in 06, again in 08. So they've been looking at doing this and making, as David said, the money appropriated to do it.
No one should be surprised by this. I was expecting this, maybe not as quickly as day 3, but he ran on the original promise of building the wall and being harder on immigration. For me personally, the sanctuary cities and removing federal funding is by far the best news this morning. I think every American should have a problem with the idea that if you live in a more liberal city, you can break the laws and maybe not have the same kind of consequences if you live in a conservative city. It is a new sheriff in town. This is a new era in America, and I think especially with the refugees, Americans have seen what happened in Germany. You and I talk about this often on the couch, and they don't want it to happen here in the United States. We don't want women running out of pepper spray because we are so scared of the sexual assaults that have been rampaging all throughout Germany. And it's just, it really is fascinating to see how quickly he's gotten to work.
I want to talk a little bit more about the legality of this with both you and the judge, Melissa. The idea, and I know Judge Napolitano has been on your show on FBN and has said that, well, withholding the funds from sanctuary cities, you really can't constitutionally do that as the federal government. However, then I dug deeper, and this is the definition of one of those cities or those areas. It has a policy that is non-cooperative and obstructs immigration enforcement. So it's breaking the law, but you can't take the money.
I mean, not only are they breaking the law, but they're bragging about it. I mean, there was an ad running here in New York for so long.
Chicago.
Right, but also Bill de Blasio here in New York was running an ad where he was bragging about the fact that when he had criminals in custody, he was not going to cooperate with the feds and turn them over, even though they were already incarcerated. And he was running this, you know, boasting about how he's ignoring federal law. Not only that, I'm sure he used my tax dollars in order to make that commercial, so that's really rubbing salt in the wound. I don't know how local cities can get away with not cooperating with the feds. It seems like withholding the money is the way to go. I've heard what the judge said, but I don't know.
No.
There's a timeline of activity.
There is case law that says that there is a certain percentage that you absolutely can withhold.
Okay.
And there is a level, and it is a percentage level of maybe anything over 25%. But make no mistake, you do not have to give money. And the way to do it is the block grants. In other words, law enforcement, I was in it for 32 years. We use block grants all the time to give cops the ability to enforce and do their job.
Sure.
And if that money is pulled, and that's not a percentage,
let me
then
tell
they
you,
can't
too,
work.
what they're dealing with and why those areas are going to feel it. So in 2016, the U.S. Border Protection apprehended a total of 415,816 people. And among them, we're still having those unaccompanied children come to the tune of 60,000. You want to have the last word?
Yeah, on that issue, there is a way to deal with the detention centers. One, let's stop building brand new detention centers that are better than the Veterans Administration facilities in this country. When you come here illegally, you're not entitled to cable TV, the best among us, visitation rooms, and 60-inch big screens so you can play games. We need to do all the things that structurally make it work. And when you reduce the money to these centers, when you reduce the block grants, when you do all of this, you take these liberal areas like California that are already writing big budgets statewide, but unable to fund them and put in the squeeze on them. We do have to wait till the end of the federal year to get to the rest of the money, September 30th. But after September 30th in the timeline, these cities are going to be in a lot of trouble with their budgets, and they won't be fixing potholes. They won't be fixing things. They won't be providing garbage services. This is where they begin to take money away from the people and services away from the people. Get on board.
Very conversation shows you the nexus between the border language and the sanctuary city. Judge, you were a fan of him doing both these things in one day. We'll move on now. Meanwhile, President Trump